Throughout history, society has always found a group of people to turn into a scapegoat. Violent crimes have been pinned on people of color and mentally ill people. The corruption of our youth has been blamed on the queer community. CSA is blamed on MAPS, or minor attracted people, which you probably know better as a. I personally am not a MAP, but I've been educated about terminology by people in the MAP community, so let's start with that. A widely stigmatized term that is often conflated with the term predator. A predator does not have to be a. There are many acts of CSA committed that have nothing to do with any attraction to the child victim, just like how adults who commit SA do not have to be attracted to their adult victims. That's because SA is about power, not attraction. Also seen as having a mental illness, but I've actually been told that it's referring to the attraction. Disorder is when that attraction causes enough dysfunction in someone's life that it qualifies as a mental disorder, or more specifically, a paraphilic disorder. This is also reflected in the DSM-5. Because of the stigma and confusion, many are called MAPs, so that's the term I'll be using in this video. But with that said, there are two things I want to make clear. Number one, I do not approve of any MAP who uses this term to prey upon minors, like those who prey upon the AAM or adult attracted minor community. Number two, this video is about reducing stigma towards MAPs who know that they can never act upon their attraction because children cannot consent to these acts. It is not about people who believe that MAP acceptance should be used to excuse offenders for their crimes. Okay, now that we've covered terminology, let's get into the actual video. Let's do a hypothetical. Think about a teenager who has gone out drinking with friends. A teen who trusts their family and feels safe enough to confess when they've done something wrong will be able to go back home and explain what happened. There will still be consequences for their actions, but they won't be severely punished. Most importantly, they will be at home where their family can watch them and intervene if they start getting sick. Now think about the opposite. A teen who doesn't have that trust or safety, who knows that they will be severely punished if their family finds out. They'll be more likely to stay with friends or find a place to sober up. Anything that involves not going back home. And if they get away with it once with no consequences, why not do it again? As long as they don't get caught, it'll be fine. I'm not comparing MAPs to impulsive teenagers or suggesting that they're ticking time bombs who will inevitably offend. I say this because we should all know by now that shame leads to secrecy. If you know that being open about something is going to have severe consequences, you're much less likely to be open about it. And the consequences for MAPs are often very severe. You can lose friends, be disowned by family, get fired from work, and become totally ostracized. In some American states, non-offending MAPs who self-report to therapists can still be arrested and forced to register as a offender despite having never offended. Even in places with more understanding laws, therapists have let clients go for being MAPs or tried to shame them out of it. Shame doesn't just encourage people to suffer alone, reducing their chances at getting help. It just doesn't work. We know fat shaming not only doesn't work, it often has the opposite effect, because problems don't get better when people lack self-esteem and a support system. They get worse. There seems to be this mindset that if we just bully MAPs enough, they'll stop existing in society, or stop existing at all. There are so many people who call for the execution of MAPs, who encourage them to commit suicide, who will stoop so low as to tell a MAP who is a CSA survivor that they deserved their abuse. That's not protecting kids. That's creating a world where someone has nothing to lose, where someone becomes apathetic and cruel because of how apathetic and cruel the world is to them. When someone does something horrible, many of us are quick to blame mental illness. But suffering with mental illness isn't the problem. It's suffering alone. There are two main obstacles when it comes to self-reporting: fear and self-esteem. As explained in the previous section, MAPs have a very understandable fear when it comes to seeking out what they need, whether that's support from other MAPs, professional help, or just some friends who won't judge them. But the other problem is low self-esteem. When society tells you over and over again that you're a bad person who will do bad things, you start to believe that you don't deserve anything good and that you should suffer alone. It doesn't help that there's this claim that pet disorders don't respond well to therapy, and people will cite professional sources to back this up. The problem is we don't have enough data to make that claim. Because people don't self-report, we don't have a larger sample size to study from. And there are other factors to consider. Is it because the therapy just sucks, like the infamous conversion therapy used on us queer people? Is it because the patient doesn't have a community or support system to rely on outside of therapy? Or is it because the majority of our data comes from MAPs in prison that have offended? I definitely don't claim to have all of the answers. I just have a folder with some research. But I do believe that us having more research would allow us to better treat pet disorders, which could potentially help us stop more children from being victimized. And you know another thing that could help children? Being able to talk about this. The hatred and stigma for MAPs has made the topic of a taboo topic, which means you can't talk about it without consequences. Platforms who claim to be protecting kids actively prevent them from being educated on things that could save them. Content creators will come up with ways to talk about MAPs that just reduces them to creeps and monsters. And commenters are chomping at the bit to harass, cyberstalk, and call out anyone who dares to express an opinion that isn't kill all. I'm not going to name the source out of respect for the poster, but I recently saw a survivor of CSA talk about how they would have recognized their abuse sooner if they weren't taught that only pets children in that way. Their abusers had no attraction to them. They didn't fit the stereotype, the boogeyman that everyone warns their kids about. I've had other survivors express similar things to me. People whose abusers used the fact that they weren't pets to reassure their victims that nothing was wrong. They would never do something like that, and if something did happen, it wasn't for that reason. Unfortunately, purity culture has taught us that bad people do bad things. Bad people, so they do bad things. It's that simple, right? No, it's not. And that's the final reason why hating MAPs doesn't protect kids. Isn't it convenient how CSA in the Catholic Church is dismissed as one bad apple, or used to write jokes framing Catholic priests as pedophiles? There's no need to examine the problems with power dynamics in a closed community that victim blames and doesn't believe in sex ed for children. It's not the system, it's just the people who take advantage of it. Isn't it nice that we don't have to think about how prisoners are mistreated because they're all bad people? Bad people deserve to be punished. It doesn't matter that some of those criminals could be innocent. It doesn't matter that people of color are disproportionately arrested and convicted, receiving harsher sentences for petty crimes. It doesn't matter that people are capable of change if given a chance. When we turn these into moral issues that fit a puritanical mindset of good versus evil, we don't fix anything. We uphold the status quo and fail to target the root causes of these issues. To use my country, America, as an example, no universal health care, not enough funding for social welfare programs to support struggling families and kids, not investing in higher quality and more accessible education, passing laws that want to censor and control what we have access to online. Honestly, the list goes on. I genuinely believe that protecting kids starts in the home. We know that there are going to be predators online, and fortunately, we have protective agencies working hard to keep children online safe. But the household, the church, any closed community is going to have much less surveillance, which is why it's so important for kids to have trusted adults, for kids to know what kind of interactions are and are not okay, for kids to feel like it's safe to set boundaries and express discomfort, no matter who it is. Because unfortunately, according to Rain, 93% of juvenile victims in SA cases knew the perpetrator. 59% were acquaintances, 34% were family members, and only 7% were strangers. Maps are not creepy middle-aged men lurking behind a computer screen. They're people of all ages, genders, backgrounds, and professions. Some people know their maps well before they turn 18. Some of them have trauma, some of them don't. Some of them struggle with a pet disorder. Some of them just have a paraphilia and not a disorder. But all of them are human. As frustrating as it is seeing people attack maps, I understand why. We are all scared. We are living in unprecedented times where it feels like everything is getting worse and the system is broken and we have no power to fix it. We feel hopeless and helpless, so we do what we can. We focus on problems that we can do something about. And those problems are the scapegoats. If you believe that people of color are inherently more violent, the solution is to lock them up. If you believe that mentally ill people are a risk to the public safety, the solution is to institutionalize them. If you believe that queer people are corrupting children, the solution is to censor queerness. And if you believe that all pedophiles are predators and are destined to become predators, the solution is to get rid of them. I'm not saying that you can't hate or be disgusted by maps, because I'm not trying to control how you feel. And if you watching this video are a survivor of CSA or know someone who is, I would never tell you that those feelings are wrong. What I am trying to say is that we can't let those feelings dictate how we treat others. We can validate our trauma, disgust, anger, and fear without using that to justify dehumanization. Because when we do that, we're not protecting anyone. We're just perpetuating an abusive cycle that everyone, in one way or another, becomes a victim of. That's all I have for this video. Thank you for listening and take care.